With how bad the New York Rangers have been so far this season, there is definitely some question marks on what this New York Rangers team could look like going forward into the future, as it does seem like this roster is potentially going to kind of get reconstructed and potentially built in a different way to kind of switch up this main kind of core group of players and kind of fix some of these issues and problems that this team definitely has had for quite a while. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at kind of how good the New York Rangers kind of future is looking like right now and kind of what we can expect going forward with this team as well, and kind of really talk about just kind of the future of the New York Rangers franchise as a whole. So let's get right into it here, and starting off with the head coach, Peter Laviolet, as well as the general manager, Chris Drury. And I think that these are two people who obviously play a pretty, important role with this franchise. The head coach and general manager spot, those positions, are very important for any sports team. So I think we definitely have to talk about them when you're kind of looking at the future. And from what we've kind of gathered and kind of seen in reports and articles and news and all that kind of stuff and updates over the last while throughout this season, as well as, as of late, especially the kind of more recent report that came out, an article from the Hockey News there that I kind of talked about in yesterday's video, it does kind of seem like, with all the news that I've kind of gathered, that we could very well end up seeing both Peter Laviolet and Chris Drury kind of remain, with this team for next season as well. I think kind of the further we go along here and the more news comes out, it definitely seems like that's more likely than seeing, either one of them fired. And I think it's pretty interesting conversation on whether or not we should see both of them kind of return with this team next season. I think for Peter Laviolet, last season, his first season as the head coach of the Rangers, takes his team all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals to lose to the eventual Stanley Cup champions. So, I think he did a pretty good job kind of coaching this team up last season. Obviously, not having the best overall roster, maybe not being built the best way, but he still helped kind of coach this team all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, which is, a very, tough thing to do. So I think he did a pretty good job there. He's been a winning coach in the past. So, I really wouldn't blame kind of most of this kind of stuff and issues and problems on, Peter Laviolet himself. I think he's done a fine job and definitely is, worthy possibly of kind of keeping his job going forward. Obviously, this season has been a big kind of, blip for the New York Rangers, we'll say, but I don't know how much you can truly kind of put on Laviolet because this roster is pretty much nearly, the exact same as last season for the most part with the kind of core guys. So, some of it can definitely be blamed on him for sure, but I don't think it's all on him. And I wouldn't necessarily say, Laviolet should be fired, although, if he were to get fired, I wouldn't be, too upset over it, but I definitely think he's done a fine job so far in his, first, season and almost a half or so of coaching the New York Rangers. And then for Chris Drury, he has had multiple kind of off seasons and kind of trade deadlines to really kind of change the look of this roster and kind of build it a different way and, build it a way that maybe can do a little bit better of a job in the playoffs. So far, he has not really kind of gone out there and done that. From reports that we've seen, it does seem like he's kind of looking to add those kind of physical players, possibly, before this upcoming deadline here and, possibly this upcoming offseason as well. So hopefully we do see a kind of a big change in the way this roster kind of looks on paper, at least this upcoming offseason, and really kind of see some big changes with this core and kind of the type of players that we have on this team and in the top six and stuff like that. So hopefully those big moves do happen this offseason. Will they happen? We'll have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, my guess is we're going to see both Laviolet and Chris Drury kind of remain with this team for next season. But, I very well could be wrong. Things can definitely change, especially if things do continue kind of on this path with the way they are right now, with the Rangers being one of the worst teams in the entire NHL. And now kind of going more towards the actual kind of player side of things here, I do think the Rangers on the NHL roster right now, do have some nice kind of future kind of core pieces possibly for this team. Someone like Brett Berard. You've got guys like even like an Adam Edstrom. I think in a bottom six role can be a great guy to have, long-term future-wise. You've also got, people like Will Cooley, Lafreniere, a big question mark with Keandre Miller. I think Braden Schneider can be a core guy. Zach Jones going to be here long-term. I'm not quite sure of that, but I do think we have some nice kind of core pieces, long-term pieces on this team right now. On the back end, two kind of guys we think are pretty much kind of locked into this kind of core are Braden Schneider and Adam Fox. The other spots there I think are fairly open, although we have some young guys kind of coming up here like Victor Mancini, who definitely should be and will be, looking to kind of keep a spot long-term, possibly, potentially if he gets a call-up at some point for the rest of this season, which I would not be against, considering we are kind of in a possible kind of little retool kind of mode here this season, although it doesn't seem like the Rangers are necessarily kind of wanting to do that. I think, getting some kind of younger guys in the lineup there at the NHL level might not be the worst idea kind of down the stretch here to get them some experience, but we'll obviously have to wait and see. And it is the Rangers here after all, so it's not like they love putting development first and above all other things. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But this team does have some good kind of active NHLers right now who are young and who can and should be, part of the future long term. But there definitely are some big question marks in some other areas, down the middle, especially, who is going to be that kind of, future long-term kind of, top six, number one and number two center for this team, kind of long-term wise. That's still kind of a big question there. Is Philip Hedl, going to be on this team for the next 8+ years? We'll have to wait and see, for the long-term future. But for right now, he can be somewhere in that kind of, top 3 center spots for sure. But we don't necessarily have that kind of superstar or at least kind of, potential future star kind of down the middle right now in the system. So hopefully we can kind of see some maybe some good young talent added on in this upcoming draft, possibly around the trade deadline there, who can kind of help kind of maybe eventually fill some of those spots in the top 6 kind of center spots at some point down the road. And like I said, I do think we have some pretty solid kind of young talent on this NHL squad, but also a lot of great young prospects. Now, we don't have, multiple kind of superstar, maybe kind of truly elite kind of prospects in this system. Yes, you want to kind of like Gabe Perreault that, sure. But I think we have some really solid ones, some really kind of good, top 6 potential forwards and some top 4 potential defensemen, and even some guys who maybe can be, maybe kind of low end top pairing defenseman or maybe a low end kind of top pairing, kind of top line forward. So there definitely are some good prospects here. I think some guys like, Gabe Perreault, obviously, Brendan Hoffman. You've got guys like Dylan Rubrick, Yaroslav Melash, Brett Berard, who's, playing a bit in the NHL right now, which is good. Bryce McConnell-Barker, Noah Laba. There are a lot of talented prospects, even guys like, Drew Fortescue in the back end there. EJ Emery, our first round pick from, this past draft, this past summer. So there are some very talented prospects in this system right now, particularly, got Gabe Perreault there, who I think has the kind of highest upside among any prospect in the system right now. I think he does have that kind of true, top line kind of forward, kind of maybe number one forward on a team kind of upside, being that superstar kind of guy, 100-point kind of player. That is his kind of ceiling, I think something around there. But obviously, there's a big question mark on whether or not he can get there. He has a long way to go before he ever gets close to that or even kind of possibly sniffing that. But I think he has that kind of upside to possibly be that kind of guy. So there are some high upside kind of prospects in this system that can be nice pieces for the future, but there aren't kind of multiple, I would say, elite kind of prospects in this system other than guys like, Gabe Perreault and, Brendan Hoffman. I wouldn't necessarily call him an elite prospect, but he definitely is a very good one. I just would kind of give the kind of upside kind of a bit higher to someone like Gabe Perreault there over someone like Brendan Hoffman, who kind of maybe, in my opinion, has maybe a bit higher of a ceiling with his kind of all-around game, that physical play, and that kind of stuff as well. But still, some really good, talented prospects in this system that definitely you should be keeping an eye on possibly, but obviously not a ton of elite prospects currently in the system. Although this upcoming draft in 2025, if the Rangers end up being as bad as they kind of project to be at this point, we could end up getting one of the top guys. Maybe it's James Haggins, a Michael Misa, a Matthew Schaefer. There are a lot, Porter Martone. There are a lot of really talented kind of prospects in this draft. I don't think there's kind of one that's maybe, kind of by far the best, but I think there's kind of 4 or 5 guys there, the Martones, the Misas, the Haggins, the Schaefers, those kind of 4 guys specifically who I think, if you get one of those 4 guys specifically, they could be a real kind of impactful player. Even like Roger McQueen, who kind of battled injuries earlier on. He's someone who could be a great prospect. So, you got a top 4 or 5 pick in this draft. I think you're getting a really, really good prospect. And there may not be that kind of McDavid in this draft, but there definitely are some very, very, good players who could be, top line forwards or top pairing defensemen that we could possibly get with our first round pick. So assuming we do get a top, kind of draft pick in this draft, winning the lottery or possibly just finishing near the bottom, things could end up, working out quite well for the Rangers to get another one of those elite prospects to kind of go alongside someone like Gabe Perreault. And whether it is a defenseman like Schaefer, who I think could be a phenomenal fit on this team, or someone like a Haggins or a Meese that have possibly played on the middle there as well, potentially there are some options there as well, the forwards and kind of the one defenseman right at the top of this draft. So it should be exciting to kind of see what happens there. I know it's not the kind of ideal spot to be kind of, talking and mentioning about the draft right now, but it is what it is here. We're in this spot as Rangers fans right now. We kind of have to look a little bit towards the draft, with the way things have been going, but at least there are some very talented prospects, kind of multiple of those guys right near the top of this draft to possibly, be the next kind of future faces of this New York Rangers franchise. So that's obviously nice. And if you can also get James Haggins, he's got that chemistry with Gabe Perreault, which is also kind of an extra kind of cool piece added in there as well. And to kind of recap quickly, I do think the Rangers have a, decent looking future. I don't think it's one of the kind of best in the NHL kind of future wise, but we do have some nice kind of NHL young players right now. We have some nice prospects, decent amount of picks. So the situation is not too bad, but with the way this team's kind of built here and stuff like that, and with the kind of ownership and management and kind of coaching staff right now, with the way things are going, there definitely are some big kind of question marks about this team kind of going forward into the future, with the way things are going to be built, who's going to be the GM, who's going to be the head coach there, is it going to be Laviolet, it's going to be Drury, what are the moves going to happen this offseason? Are we going to see that massive, superstar traded for? There are a lot of big question marks with this team. We're just going to have to wait and be patient to kind of see truly what ends up unfolding here and what ends up happening with this franchise. But anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts and opinions on the New York Rangers as a whole, as well as the future of this team going forward. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one. Let's go Rangers.